Profiles on the Breeze. Well, Paul DuVille is an expat and the owner of Caye Coffee here in San Pedro Belize. He bought the business about 18 months ago and moved down from Canada. I asked him to reflect on his decision to move to Belize and about some of the challenges of owning a business in a foreign country.
That's really a fun story for us to tell. I, for years, worked in a consulting capacity and had traveled extensively and was really not geared towards sitting in my office all day anymore. My wife, on the other hand, was in a very good job and had been there almost 20 years. And so for about 5 years, I was trying to convince her to semi-retire, and she just liked the security of that job. And I told her, if you ever want to go into semi-retirement, when you get tired of that beautiful job you have, let's go into manufacturing of some sort. And basically, she came home one day and said, it's time. And we started working on what were we going to do, manufacturing, what was the product going to be. She's a coffee lover. She's the coffee aficionado in the group here. And then we looked at K-Cup distribution and warehousing, and there was a lot of overhead to that. And then we thought, let's do something a little more personal and something that was, I guess, becoming a trend in the coffee business, and that was a small roastery specific to our own unique taste of coffee and what we wanted to produce. Being new to the coffee roasting business, I had to take a few months while I was waiting for my permits to teach myself how to roast coffee. It's been a real good learning experiences. Our background, Marcy, my wife, and I, is manufacturing, so we thought when we semi-retire, we're going to manufacture something. She picked coffee because it was a sustainable product, figured it wasn't going away in our lifetime, so off we went on the coffee manufacturing business side of things. I guess when we decided that we were going to go into semi-retirement and start our own business, the one prerequisite my wife had was if we're leaving Canada, we're going to definitely be going somewhere warm. So on the list of roasteries that we were looking at, Belize fell into that category, so we ended up here. Well, I guess for me, from a lifestyle perspective, the weather difference, being warm all the time, was not something we're used to up in Canada. In regards to starting the business, I guess I've been pretty fortunate. You know, Belize made it very easy for me as long as I had a little bit of patience and followed the proper channels and checklists and hit up all the right departments. It was actually very easy to establish the business here. I was very appreciative of how easy it was. Well, most of the business comes obviously from the tourism industry here on Ambergris Caye, which is where we focused primarily, the startup of the business. But it's slowly growing, and we're really happy that a lot of the locals are catching on to the fact that Caye Coffee is probably the best coffee in Belize as far as we can tell, and we seem to be starting to get a good following of local people. So hopefully we can get them drinking more Caye Coffee in the future. You know, in my research and everything I've learned so far in practicing and testing and teaching ourselves how to roast, there's really two components. One is you have to have and start with a good quality coffee bean, green, raw, clean, hard bean. So we focused on where are the best places to get that. Guatemalan beans are ranked the best beans in the world, high elevation Guatemalan beans. If you talk about the quality of the beans and the quality of the taste of the coffee, it really comes down to the moisture in the beans. So the lower the elevation, the temperature doesn't get cold at night, therefore a lot of the moisture escapes right on the tree before they're even picked and processed. That's why high elevation's ranked way above low, and Belize is considered to be low to mid elevation, from 700 feet to about 1,300 or 1,400 feet above sea level. So they would be ranked down on the scale. Not to say that it's not a good bean. There are those people that like a lighter tasting coffee, not as bold, not as much caffeine in it. So it has its own niche market there for those types of people. The people we get here at the shop are really more into bold coffee and that whole new niche market of the small roastery. A lot of people that come in here, mention that we're like microbreweries. I really assimilate the coffee industry very much to a vineyard or a small craft beer brewing company. Crops change every year. You're not going to get the same beer year to year. You're not going to get the same coffee year to year. You're not going to get the same wine year to year. So it all depends on the environment and the weather condition, which makes it kind of interesting and unique. It's an ever-changing thing, and you have to stay on top of it to make sure that you're putting out a consistent product. We decided that we weren't going to go with multiple beans, so we use the high elevation Guatemalan bean and we do 2 roasts. Our light roast, or what they refer to as an American roast or a blonde roast or a French roast, really just means it wasn't cooked as long as a dark roast. We call that Front Street. So our Front Street is what we call a breakfast blend or a light roast. So it's got a higher caffeine content. Most people think it's the other way around. But it still has that earthiness of the bean because you haven't cooked out a lot of the moisture and the oils that are contained within because you didn't cook it as long. Our dark roast, which we call Backstreet, we try and take that one right to the edge without that burnt, bitter flavor. So we take it as far as we can go, and we're monitoring that roast minute by minute. And the last 30 seconds to a minute can be the difference between throwing the batch in the garbage or getting a really quality, bold coffee. Middle Street is a blend, where we literally, by weight, mix the beans, the roasted beans from Front Street and Back Street 50-50, and it creates its own unique flavor on its own. Most in San Pedro here, most of the larger grocery stores carry it. There are a lot of specialty coffee bars that actually sell it, as well as some of the gift shops and gift shops within the hotels and resorts. So it's pretty much readily available in over 100 places already in the 18 months that we've been open. There's several places that are using our coffee. We highly recommend Tropicals, which is a specialty coffee bar at Ramon's Village. Rum and Bean down at Mahogany Bay, the Coffee Bar right on Front Street, as well as Havana Cigar Shop. They are actually using our Backstreet product to do a Cuban coffee, which is very interesting. Estelle's for breakfast, Island Buzz Cafe are all selling our coffee, and we're very appreciative. Well, I know that social media has a big impact pretty much globally now, but I found it's actually been more crucial for us to have a social media presence here in Belize. Not a lot of people have computers. A lot of people do have cell phones. Facebook's a very popular method of marketing, and it seems to have a far more expansive reach than your traditional newspapers that I would find in the country or magazines or that type of thing. TripAdvisor, because we're in an area that's, a high tourism area, has really been a benefit to us. People have come in, tried the products, given us some good reviews, and that has actually been building on top of itself. So I would say those are probably the 2 primary marketing functions that have really helped us grow. But we do still work with the local newspapers and bloggers and just to get the word out that, hey, we make some gourmet coffee here, and we believe it's Belize's premium coffee. Well, once we had narrowed down to Belize as one of the choices of the businesses that we were going to purchase, then became is this an all-in type of thing, or are we going to retain our stuff and pay for storage and maybe come back or maybe not come back? It was a real hard decision. Probably the biggest factor or thing that we worried the most about was leaving our family and friends back in Canada. That was probably the emotional aspect of the whole move. Other than that, we really embraced the fact that it was a new adventure, coming to a new country, meeting new people, understanding their culture, trying to fit in. We looked at that as more of an adventure and a positive experience as opposed to something that would be scary or detrimental. We basically packed up everything and sold it. I moved down here 3 months in advance to do the closing of the deal, and Marcy stayed back and sold the house and sold the cars and packed everything up, and she probably had to do way more work than I did. Other than that, it's just been a real great experience to this point. I think the one thing that has helped us is to really keep focused on the fact that we're guests in this country. This is not our home country. It's really important to understand their cultures and try and learn what it is that motivates the people in the new land where you're going to. If you don't have the ability to do that or think you're going to come down here and change their lives, probably a good choice to stay at home. If you have that adventurous attitude, then by all means, go down, meet the people, learn the culture, and become part of the community if you can. And that's part of the things that are really motivating us to potentially stay here the rest of our lives. It's been that good for us. The weather here is great. The people here are fantastic. They've treated us very well. So, yeah, we're seriously considering making this our permanent home for the rest of our lives. Both of us had traveled fairly extensively throughout the Caribbean, so it really wasn't that much of a culture shock as we had seen, very similar communities in other countries around the Caribbean. I equate it to life in Canada about 25 years ago, if you think about it. I stand in line at the bank that I haven't done for 20 years back home. I have to go to the water services office in order to pay my monthly bill. So those kinds of things made us realize that we had acquired a lot of stuff and we were living at 100,000 miles an hour. So it was actually, in our minds, a really good thing to step back and maybe get back to a more simple life. And, where you would think because we've had that high-paced, fast-paced lifestyle, we would miss it. I really don't miss the stuff. I think anytime you're an entrepreneur and especially when you're going to another country, there's going to be a little bit of stress. But if I compare that to the stress levels we had working the corporate jobs that we had, it's night and day. I mean, it was almost like instant relief coming here. The whole Caribbean has a much more laid-back attitude, and the people are a little more laid back and not in so much of a hurry on their day-to-day tasks and going about their life. Whereas back home, if you didn't keep up, you got left behind, and you always worried about that. We're kind of glad we're not dealing with that anymore. In the sense of the business, it's not really that much different than at home. You still have to go out there and find your customers. You still have to establish relationships with them. I find that a lot of the business people here, again, are a little bit behind in terms of what's available to them. So you're still dealing with a more traditional paper-based, more of a friendly relationship type business relationship as opposed to back home where you can do business now without even seeing a person or signing a check, and it's all done electronically. I would have to say too that just because we're in a beautiful Caribbean, warm climate, Central American country, we still go to work every day, 8 hours a day, and it's not that much different than back home in terms of having to apply yourself to the business. But the people are a little more laid back, so that makes it a little bit easier here, I think, in terms of day-to-day dealings. I like the fact that I have to go to 5 different grocery stores if I want to complete my shopping list, because we live on an island, not everything's accessible all the time. That actually provides us with a little bit of excitement and fun, as opposed to back home where if you had to do that was a real stressful thing and a sense of frustration. Here it's actually a little more of an adventure type thing, and you learn to be a little more laid back and relaxed and take things slower. We love it here. Like I said, we love the people here. The weather's beautiful. I think the only thing I would do differently is tie up my kids and their spouses and grandkids and drag them with us. We miss our family and our parents. That's the only downside of what we've done, but other than that, it's been a real great experience, and we're very appreciative of being here in Belize.
That is Paul DuVille, Canadian expat and owner of Caye Coffee here in San Pedro Belize, on Profiles on the Breeze.